Hi, I'm Jonathan from Moneybox. Hopefully, many of you will have heard of us. We're a UK-based fintech, now about 10 years old, on a mission to help people save, invest, and plan for their future. We're building what we hope will become the UK's category-defining wealth management platform. I've been at Moneybox since the beginning and was part of the founding team that brought our first product to market. These days, I head up our platform engineering group, although not in the traditional sense, but focused on our investment platform and the systems that ensure money and assets are handled safely and securely. At Moneybox, we offer stock and index investing through ISAs, LISAs, SIPs, plus a range of cash accounts, but always with a long-term mindset. Our goal is to help people achieve what they want from life, whether that's buying a home, building an emergency fund, saving for their children's future, or preparing for retirement. In short, we aim to help people at every stage of their financial journey. And it's been a strong journey so far. We've grown to over 1.5 million funded customers and manage more than 18 billion of assets under administration. The slides disappeared there. We are also profitable. We've been profitable for the past couple of years and now have around 450 employees, including about 100 in engineering. From a technology perspective, it's a busy platform. We handle over 20 million API calls a day, and during peak periods, we see around 40 logins a second. And those numbers keep growing year on year. From the very beginning, our philosophy has been to keep things as simple as possible, but, to borrow from Einstein, no simpler. The thing about simplicity is that it's actually really hard to achieve. It's not about cutting corners or avoiding complexity. It's about doing the hard thinking up front so the system stays easy to maintain and extend later. And we've had to be deliberate about that. There's always a temptation to add more, another tool, another layer, another abstraction, because it feels like progress. But every addition carries a maintenance cost, a cognitive load, and eventually a financial cost. As engineers, it's often our job to say no to unnecessary sophistication. It's discipline rather than lack of ambition or appetite for learning. One of my favorite takeaways from a previous CTO Craft conference came from Milena Nikolic, the former CTO of the Trainline. She said that if you adopt a new technology that's similar to something that you already have, you should fully commit to moving over to it within a 1 to 2 year time frame. Most teams don't do this. They get the initial kick out of adding something new, but what they've really done is add another layer of technical debt. Debt that compounds over time. And I'll be honest, we're no saints in this area either. Scaling a company is hard, and maintaining simplicity as you grow is even harder. But we've got another opportunity to set this right, which I'm going to come back to later. One of the things that's helped us stay focused on simplicity is our company-wide obsession with cost management. Despite calling myself commercial on my CV, I don't think I truly understood what it meant until I joined Moneybox. And now it runs through my veins. That commercial discipline has shaped the way that we design and operate our platform, always looking for leverage, not just complexity. And it's a big reason why our cost to serve has remained so low. Architecturally, we started with a single monolith that was integrated with several third-party services, handling payments, AML, and trade execution. The monolith was built around 3 core components: an API layer, a batch server, and an admin portal. We ran everything on Azure App Services with a single SQL database underneath. We used the .NET framework on Windows, not your typical startup stack at that time, but it was rock solid and it let us move quickly. Finally, we wrapped everything with Cloudflare, using the WAF to protect our API and Cloudflare access to give our batch and admin backends VPN-like security. This setup gave us real confidence in uptime, resilience, and security. We were safe in the knowledge that our hosting was being maintained by the very same people who built the underlying technologies. But underneath that simplicity was a deliberate choice. We had gone all in on platform as a service. Rather than managing our own VMs, networking, or scaling layers, we focused on what really mattered, building features for our customers, instead of having to worry about infrastructure. I actually first heard this from Troy Hunt, and it quickly became a running joke for us too. If something went wrong outside of our control, the best thing to do was to walk across the road and grab a cup of coffee. It would often be fixed by the time you'd drunk it. We focused on building our business, and Azure and Cloudflare took care of the rest: patching, scaling, security, compliance. Literally standing on the shoulders of giants. Need more oomph in the database? Click, and it's done. Need more web compute? Click, and it's done. Back to building features. Which is incredible when you really stop to think about what's going on underneath the hood. We built and ran all of this with a tiny engineering team, all developers, no separate ops function. So it was genuine DevOps, infrastructure-minded engineers who ran everything end to end. The result was a very low cost base and a platform that could evolve quickly. That model served us well through to around 2019, roughly 3 years into our journey. In 2019, we hit an inflection point. We'd outgrown the company that provided our investing services and decided to build our own investing platform from the ground up. It was also the moment that we could have easily have fallen into what I think is a common trap, rebuilding everything as microservices. At the time, the Monzo hype machine was in full swing, and much of the attention was focused on their microservices architecture. That rubbed off on a lot of startups, often to their detriment, because they missed one crucial detail: the sheer scale of investment required to make that model work. Monzo had poured tens of millions of pounds into expertise and infrastructure needed to run such a system reliably and efficiently. In fact, it's easily hundreds of millions now. That level of runway simply wasn't available to us, and frankly, we didn't think it was necessary. Instead of going down the microservices route, we looked more closely at what Starling were doing and modeled our new investing platform, called Sycamore, on the self-contained systems approach. For those unfamiliar, it's similar in spirit to microservices, independent systems with clear boundaries, but with much coarser granularity. Each system is self-reliant, owning its own UI, logic, and data, and avoiding the web of dependencies that comes from slicing things too finely. The advantage is that if you get a boundary wrong, which is inevitable when you're building something innovative, that is far easier to correct. With microservices, once your data is scattered across dozens of databases, those mistakes become very expensive to unwind. In short, self-contained systems is a simpler model with fewer moving parts and the ability to adapt faster. In our case, that meant that we now had 2 monoliths connected through APIs and asynchronous messaging. Or, as Will Ferrell put it in Starsky and Hutch, 2 dragons. Not a metaphor you hear much in architecture, but somehow it fits. Well, at least I think it does. This setup let us move away from our investing partner in under 9 months to a fixed deadline we simply couldn't miss. We hit that deadline and migrated everything without downtime or even our customers noticing. This was a story that I shared at the last CTO Craft conference. That move took us away from being aggregator to being a vertically integrated investment platform, something only a handful of UK investment firms have achieved. It gave us full control over the customer journey, a lower cost structure than many of our peers, and unlocked the next phase of growth. Fast forward to today, and we are entering the next phase of our journey, replacing the original monolith that got us started with another monolith, this time called Willow. It's a purpose-built system shaped by everything that we've learned over the past decade. Our migration approach is to move across slivers of functionality one by one until the transition is fully complete. Willow is modular. It uses a CQRS light approach where features are broken down into commands and related commands are grouped together into cohesive domains. The data, however, remains as a single unified store, or rather a blend of stores, since we're using both traditional SQL and document databases to balance out performance and cost. This gives us flexibility to course correct if we get a domain boundary wrong. As I mentioned earlier, moving code is easy, but moving data is not, especially in always-on systems that people now expect. Well, unless you're HMRC. Willow finally gives us consistent domain modeling across everything, which, if you've ever worked in an aggregator setup, you'll know is no small feat. It simplifies how we think about the platform. It reduces cognitive load. It allows us to make full use of modern tech like Cosmos DB and hyperscale SQL from the ground up. And there's also the opportunity that I mentioned earlier, the chance to reset and live the discipline that Milena talked about. Change is allowed, but only if it's considered holistically. We also now have a small operations team, around 5% of our total engineering group. They've evolved our infrastructure to handle our ever-increasing load while continually improving our security posture. It's still lean, it's still simple, but with the right specialization where it counts. So that brings us full circle back to where we started, with simplicity as the guiding principle. When you take everything that I've walked through, the architecture choices, the platform decisions, it all compounds into one result, a very low cost to serve. Today, that figure stands at around 10p per customer per month, or £1.20 per year if you're being lazy, from a pure tech standpoint. Simple systems, simple hosting, simple processes, where possible, of course. But over time, those simple choices become a huge competitive advantage. And that's really the message that I want to leave you with today. It pays to keep things simple and to think critically about trends before applying them to your business. Thank you very much.
So we do have some time for questions. I don't know if anything has come through on Slido. Can I see any? Just while we're waiting then to see if some do come through, there we go, we've got one already. So, do you think that LLM advice is materially different than Google search? It feels different, but both based on mainly public data and use probabilistic methods.
Could that be for the talk prior?
Probably. Well, just while we see then if there's any others come through, the question that came to my mind as you were speaking is, I'm sure loads of us are in places where we have very complex systems, and we can see that kind of complexity all over the place. If somebody wanted to get started and think, okay, we know I need to simplify things, I know I need to make it easier to manage, where do you think people should get started if somebody wanted to have a look at their systems and say, where would they get started on trying to simplify?
Interesting. I mean, it's all very context dependent on the setup that you are in. If we go back to the slides.
Probably not able to.
Can we go back to the slide? Well, we had two choices when we decided to replace the original monolith that got us going. So we could either build that up and evolve that into the next generation. So, or we could do what we did, which was start again and cut across slivers of functionality. We decided to do the latter, cut across slivers of functionality, because there was a bit too much technical debt in the old platform, but also it gave us a chance to reimagine certain things that we had got slightly wrong, I suppose, from a domain modeling point of view, which we then realized a couple of years into the journey. And so I think that's where I would say the best place to start is work out a nice bounded domain, and then if you convince the people that hold the purse strings that you then can move functionality over, that's the best way to do it. But you start with like a consistent domain that you know is pretty solid, and then move stuff into it, and then pull away from the old system.
Okay. And we have got a few coming through now, including some voting as well. So nice simple one at the top then. What's monolith when you say?
So I define that as a single system, a single deployable, is responsible for everything end to end. So it's not reliant on different systems when it's starting up or when it interacts to serve a request. So it's kind of self-reliant.
Okay. Another one there with quite a few votes. What's your release cadence looking like for larger monolith? Do you struggle to coordinate multiple teams working on a code base?
This is, I can go into a lot of detail
about you've got about 4 minutes.
4 minutes. So the way that we do it is through a branching structure, obviously, but what we do is that we run a main line, and then we run a separate develop branch. And there's a way that we basically coordinate. People develop, they branch off the main line, and they build their code off there. They then merge it into develop, or cherry pick it across into develop and get it into the test systems. So that kind of model can allow us to run things for a long time and test to make sure that they work, for instance, and then when they're ready, then somebody merges the original branch into the main line and goes out. So it gives us like the right blend of testing and release frequency, but we release multiple times a day. We do continuous deployments, all the good stuff that you would expect from a modern fintech.
Okay. A quick question there then on when you're talking about cost to serve, does it include DevOps salaries? I guess more generally, is it pay and non-pay?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I was toying with the idea of putting that in or not. It is not in there. So we have about 5 DevOps engineers that keep our system going, so you can maybe extrapolate that as to the cost from a DevOps team.
Okay. Next one then, are you worried about dependency on one cloud? I assume monolith systems were containerized. How many of the native Azure service dependencies did you have?
So we are all in on Azure.
Okay.
I think that is a wiser move than going multi-cloud, because as you pointed out there, if you're multi-cloud, you have to, the least common denominator is what you fall back to, and that is not using all the good stuff that the cloud offers. And from previous life, we actually got ourselves into more trouble trying to be multi-cloud than actually just going all in on one cloud. But obviously, if you go all in one cloud, as you've seen with the AWS outage or the Cloudflare outage yesterday, you are at the mercy of those providers. Things do come up fairly quickly, though. That's the counterpoint.
Okay. We do have time for a couple more, so I'll try and get through some of these quickly as well. How do you think it says in brackets, wise, so not completely unbiased question, avoidance of over-granular microservices assisted, I've lost it, the testability of Sycamore?
Yeah, that's interesting. So Sycamore is kind of testable as it is self-contained. So the system hangs together by itself, and then the way it interacts with our main system is via messaging outwards, right? So it's actually kind of out of like the main flow of the customer's request path. So it allows us to separate it out into the incoming requests from the main platform into smaller chunks, test those in isolation, and then verify the messaging coming back. So yeah, in general, you can use normal test harnesses like Postman or the like, and then test the messages coming back via log management or like Datadog or whatever. So it just keeps things nice, simple, all in one place. You can follow the logic through within code. So easy to debug and see what's going on.
Okay. Let's do another. Where do you stand on monorepos as a collection of micro-ish services without the dependency hell from going full microservices?
So I'm pretty pro monorepos, but I mean but when they are, I think, well, in our setup, each self-contained system is a monorepo by itself, right? So we have 3 main monorepos now. In terms of using monorepos for a collection of services, I'm not sure. That's not really the setup that we've gone after.
Okay, let's do one more then quickly. So when you migrated to the second or third monolith, did the building of new features slow down? How did you balance the migration work versus new features?
So we are currently going through that, and it's actually speeding up. So the old system is a little bit clunky, and it's got 10 years of sort of technical debt and sort of figuring out our domain. The new way, we've been able to sort of distill that into models that are more sort of unified. So we're using like a model for a user journey that through our app, and that is that's our flows framework, for instance. Every new journey through our app is now modeled on that flows framework. So we're actually starting to go faster. And one of the big selling points for getting Willow the budget to exist, which is a multi-million-pound project, was on the promise of 2x productivity from our squads in the next year or so, which we think is very achievable. But it's going faster than rather than slower.
Great. Thank you very much, Jonathan, and thanks for answering all those questions for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you.